Sometimes evil doesn't come from strangers in the dark, but from the people who share your blood. If someone had told me that my own 12-year-old brother would one day try to kill me, I would have laughed. After all, he was just a child. But behind his innocent eyes hid something far more dangerous than I ever imagined. And the scariest part? Our mother never saw it, or maybe she didn't want to. Before I begin, let me remind you, evil often grows in silence. It doesn't appear suddenly. It creeps in slowly, feeding on jealousy, neglect, and greed until one day it explodes. That's exactly what happened in my family. And if I hadn't prepared myself, if I hadn't trusted my instincts, I might not be here to tell you this story today. I grew up in a small town outside of Boston. Our house wasn't huge, but it was decent. A 2-story wooden home with peeling white paint and a backyard that looked wild no matter how many times my father tried to tame it. My father was a kind man, a bookkeeper at a small firm, who believed in honesty and hard work. My mother, on the other hand, was a storm. She had moods that could fill the entire house. One moment soft and loving, the next moment sharp enough to cut you down to pieces. When my little brother Nathan was born, everything changed. I was 10 at the time, old enough to notice how the attention shifted away from me completely. Nathan became the sun, and my mother orbited around him as if nothing else mattered. Before I continue, I just want to thank you for listening to my story. It means more than you know. If you feel comfortable, tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is right now. Now, let me take you into my story. He cried. She gave him what he wanted. He misbehaved. She laughed and called him spirited. He broke things. She blamed me for not watching him carefully. I told myself he was just a baby, that things would balance out eventually. But by the time Nathan was old enough to walk and talk, I realized something chilling. He didn't just want attention, he demanded it. And when he didn't get it, his anger was unnatural. I remember one afternoon when he was 6. We were playing in the yard. I had a jump rope, and he wanted it. When I refused, he picked up a rock and threw it at my head. It missed by inches, and my mother, instead of scolding him, hugged him tightly and told me not to provoke my poor little brother. I stood there, blood dripping from a scratch on my forehead, and realized something important. Nathan had no fear of consequences. He was learning that he could do anything and walk away without punishment. By the time I turned 18, my father passed away suddenly from a heart attack. That night is carved into my memory like a wound that never truly heals. I remember the ambulance lights flashing across the windows, my mother screaming, and Nathan sitting silently in the corner, not a tear in his eyes. While I sobbed into my pillow, he sat at the kitchen table asking when we would get Dad's money. That was the very first time I saw the greed in him. He was only 10. Dad didn't leave us wealthy, but he had some savings, life insurance, and a modest inheritance from his own parents. Most of it was put into a trust, half for me, since I was already legally an adult, and the other half saved for Nathan when he turned 18. It wasn't millions, but it was enough to give us both a good start. I thought Nathan would forget about it. After all, he was just a child. But he didn't. 2 years later, when I was 20, the money I inherited had grown to around $70,000. I wasn't reckless with it. I worked part-time while finishing college, living cheap, and saving carefully. I wanted to build a better life for myself, something Dad would have been proud of. Nathan, however, watched me with eyes full of hunger. He was 12 now, and with each passing day, his questions became darker. How much money do you have? Where do you keep it? What would happen to your share if you suddenly died? At first, I laughed nervously, brushing it off as childish curiosity. But deep inside, a seed of fear was growing. Nathan wasn't like other boys his age. While his classmates played video games or obsessed over superheroes, he devoured crime shows, documentaries about killers, and books about easy money. I once caught him searching how much life insurance pays out when someone dies young. When I confronted him, he smirked and said he was just curious. But the look in his eyes told me otherwise. And then, small accidents started happening. One evening, I was walking down the stairs carrying laundry. The lights went out suddenly, and my foot slipped on something slippery smeared across a step. I fell hard, twisting my ankle badly. When the power came back, I saw butter spread across the stair. Nathan stood at the bottom, pretending to play with Rusty, our dog, but his grin, it was too wide, too pleased. Another time, I was driving home from work. My car brakes felt strange. I got it checked the next day, and the mechanic told me someone had loosened a bolt. My stomach turned cold. I knew Nathan had been in the garage the day before. I wanted to scream, to confront him, to tell my mother what I suspected. But who would believe me? A 12-year-old boy plotting murder? It sounded insane. And my mother? She would defend him no matter what. She lived in denial, blind to his cruelty, deaf to his malice. So I kept quiet. But inside, my resolve hardened. If Nathan truly wanted to hurt me, I had to be smarter than him. I had to stay 2 steps ahead. And that's when I began my plan. I started keeping a hidden journal, recording every strange incident, receipts, and even took photos of things I found suspicious. I quietly installed a small camera in my car and one near the staircase. I told no one, not even my closest friend, because I knew sooner or later, Nathan would try again. And when he did, I would be ready. Part 1 ends with me lying awake in my room one night, staring at the ceiling, listening to Nathan's footsteps outside my door. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My hands gripped the edge of the mattress as I heard the faint sound of metal scratching against my lock. My 12-year-old brother wasn't just a spoiled child anymore. He was testing the boundary between thought and action, and I was about to find out how far he was willing to go. The night I heard Nathan scratching at my door, I didn't sleep a single second. Every creak of the house, every rustle of wind through the old wooden walls, felt like a warning. I lay there frozen, my heart pounding in my ears. The scratching stopped after a minute, and his footsteps faded down the hall. But I knew what it meant. He was testing me. He wanted to know how easy it would be to get inside while I slept. By morning, I had made up my mind. This wasn't just childish mischief. Nathan was escalating. That day at breakfast, my mother hummed happily as she flipped pancakes. She acted like the world was normal, like nothing had changed since Dad's death. Nathan sat across from me, his hair messy, his fork stabbing into the pancakes with unusual force. His eyes met mine for a second, and I swear they didn't belong to a 12-year-old boy. They were calculating, cold, like a chess player planning 10 moves ahead. I smiled back at him, pretending not to notice. If he wanted a game, I was willing to play, but on my terms. The first real attempt came a week later. It was a Saturday, and my mother asked me to take Nathan with me to the grocery store. She said it would be good for us to spend time together. I didn't argue. I wanted to see how far he was willing to go. We drove in silence most of the way. Nathan sat beside me, his small hands fidgeting with the seatbelt. At one point, he asked casually what would happen to my savings if something happened to me. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. I gave him a vague answer, but inside, my suspicion solidified into certainty. He wasn't just thinking about it. He was planning it. When we got home, I carried the bags inside while Nathan disappeared into the garage. I thought nothing of it until later that night, when I decided to grab a soda. The moment I stepped into the garage, I froze. The car smelled like gasoline. I crouched down and saw it instantly. Tiny scratches near the fuel line, as if someone had tried to cut it. My chest went cold. If that line had been cut deeper, the car could have leaked gas and caught fire the next time I started it. And there was only one person who could have done it. I didn't confront Nathan right away. Instead, I installed another hidden camera, this time in the garage. If he was bold enough to try again, I would catch him. For days, nothing happened. Nathan went about his life as though nothing was wrong. He played with Rusty in the yard, watched TV, and pretended to do his homework. My mother remained oblivious. Sometimes, I wondered if she secretly knew but chose not to face the truth. Maybe she thought protecting him was more important than protecting me. Then came the night of the fire. It was late, past midnight. I woke to the smell of smoke. At first, I thought I was dreaming. But when I opened my eyes, I saw the faint orange glow dancing under my bedroom door. My throat tightened. I stumbled out of bed, coughing, and yanked the door open. Flames licked the bottom of the staircase, climbing higher with every second. The air was thick and burning, making my eyes water. And there, at the very top of the stairs, stood Nathan. He wasn't screaming for help. He wasn't trying to put it out. He was watching, calm, silent, his small figure outlined against the firelight. And when our eyes met, he smiled. My blood ran cold. That smile told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't an accident. Nathan had set this fire, and he wanted me to burn. I didn't have time to think. I grabbed my phone and leapt out of the window onto the roof of the porch. My ankle screamed in pain as I hit the ground, but I didn't stop. I ran to the neighbor's house, pounding on their door until they let me in and called the fire department. The firefighters arrived within minutes, dousing the flames before the entire house went up. My mother came running from her room, screaming Nathan's name, but he was already outside, standing barefoot on the grass, pretending to cry. I watched him closely as the firemen questioned us. He told them he had woken up to the smell of smoke, just like me. He said he tried to warn me, but I was already gone. His story was flawless, and the adults believed him. But I didn't. I knew the truth. The next morning, when everyone else was asleep, I checked the hidden camera I had placed near the garage. My hands shook as I clicked through the footage, and then I saw it. Nathan, just hours before the fire, sneaking into the garage with a box of matches and a can of lighter fluid. He looked around carefully, then carried it inside the house. The timestamp didn't lie. My stomach churned. There it was, proof. Cold, undeniable proof. But the question was, what now? If I showed it to my mother, would she even believe me? Or would she defend him again? Claim he was too young, too innocent? Worse, what if she destroyed the evidence to protect him? I realized then that I couldn't trust her. I couldn't trust anyone. This was between me and Nathan now. So I copied the footage to a hidden drive and stored it where only I could access it. And then I continued pretending. Pretending I hadn't seen anything. Pretending I wasn't afraid. Pretending I didn't know that my 12-year-old brother had just tried to kill me. Because deep down, I understood something terrifying. Nathan wouldn't stop here. He had failed once, and that meant he would try again. And again. And again. Until he succeeded. What he didn't know was that I had already started building my plan. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to beg for my mother's protection. I was going to outsmart him. And when the time came, Nathan wouldn't be the hunter anymore. He would be the prey. Part 2 ends with me lying in bed that night, staring at the ceiling once again. The house smelled faintly of smoke, a reminder of how close I had come to death. Nathan slept down the hall, innocent in everyone's eyes. But not in mine. I had the evidence. I had the truth. And soon, I would have justice. After the fire, life inside the house turned into a quiet battlefield. To anyone looking from the outside, we were just a grieving family trying to move on. My mother fussed over Nathan more than ever, making him his favorite meals and excusing his every mistake. I went to work, came home, and pretended to be fine. But underneath the surface, I was preparing for war. Every time Nathan walked past me, I felt his eyes on me like daggers. He thought he was invisible, that his small size and innocent face were enough to fool the world. Maybe he had fooled everyone else, but not me. I had seen the smile at the top of the stairs, the cold flicker of satisfaction when he thought I would burn. I began to study him the way one studies a dangerous animal. What hours did he sneak around? Where did he hide the things he stole? Which lies did he tell my mother, and which ones did she choose to believe? One night, when the house was asleep, I slipped into his room. My heart thudded as I opened his closet. Beneath a pile of old toys, I found a shoebox. Inside was a collection that made my blood freeze. Matches, a pocket knife, duct tape, and a wad of cash that definitely wasn't his. The box told a story, one he couldn't explain away. But I didn't touch anything. I put it all back exactly as I found it. Nathan needed to think he was safe. If I revealed my hand too soon, I would lose my only advantage. Instead, I upgraded my cameras. I placed one in the hallway, another in the kitchen, and even one in the backyard shed. Every corner of the house became part of my silent watchtower. If Nathan made a move, I would know. It didn't take long. 2 weeks after the fire, I caught him on camera again. He was in the kitchen, past midnight, dragging a chair to reach the top cabinet where my vitamins were stored. His hands moved quickly, almost excitedly. He poured half the pills into his palm and replaced them with something else from his pocket. The next morning, I stared at the little bottle on the counter. My hand hovered over it, but I didn't take one. Instead, I switched the bottle with an identical one I had bought the day before, keeping the tainted one hidden. He thought he was clever, but now I had even more proof. That day at work, I couldn't focus. My mind kept replaying the image of his small hands tipping those pills. He wasn't guessing anymore. He was planning, methodical, determined. And the scariest part wasn't just that he wanted me dead. It was how patient he was. He was only 12, but he understood patience. I realized then that this wasn't just about money. It was about control, about power. Nathan wanted to be the center of everything, and he believed the money would make that happen. But deep down, I wondered if he also wanted me gone simply because I stood in his way. The tension built like a storm cloud. My mother noticed I was quieter, but when I tried to hint at Nathan's behavior, she shut me down. "He's just a child," she said. "You're imagining things." Her words cut deeper than she knew. Because if she couldn't believe me now, then she never would. I was on my own. So I set the next stage of my plan. I bought a small safe and locked my most important things inside: my documents, my bank information, the hidden drive with the camera footage. I pretended it was just for security, but in truth, it was bait. I placed it where Nathan could easily find it. And sure enough, he noticed. One evening, I walked past his room and saw him sketching something in a notebook. He snapped it shut when I entered, but not before I caught a glimpse. It wasn't schoolwork. It was a drawing of the safe. My safe. I almost laughed. He thought he was stalking me, but all along, I was watching him. Days turned into weeks, each one tightening the noose. Nathan tried small tricks: a loose screw on the railing, marbles scattered on the stairs, even unplugging the smoke alarm in my room. Each time, I dodged it. Each time, I collected more proof. But I knew the final move was coming. He was getting desperate, and desperation makes people reckless. The breaking point came on a rainy night in early spring. Thunder rolled across the sky, rattling the windows, and the whole house felt uneasy. My mother had gone to bed early, leaving just me and Nathan awake. I sat in the living room, pretending to read. He came in quietly, carrying a blanket, and curled up on the other couch. For the first time in weeks, he looked almost like a normal 12-year-old boy. His eyes were wide, his voice soft as he asked if I thought the storm would knock out the power. I told him maybe, and he nodded, curling deeper into the blanket. But then I noticed something strange. His shoes. They were wet. Not from the short walk across the carpet, but soaked, muddy, like he had been outside. My pulse quickened. Why would he be outside during a thunderstorm? Unless. I excused myself and went upstairs, quietly slipping to my room. I checked the feed from the backyard camera. My stomach dropped. The footage showed Nathan sneaking outside earlier with a pair of wire cutters. He had clipped the generator cables, then poured something dark and shiny along the back porch. Gasoline. My entire body went cold. He wasn't planning a trick this time. He was planning to burn the house down with me in it. And my mother, too. That's when I knew it was time. I couldn't just collect evidence anymore. If I waited even one more day, someone would die. The counterplan I had been building piece by piece was about to come alive. Nathan thought he was the predator. He thought he had me cornered, weak, oblivious. But what he didn't know was that I had already set the trap. And by the end of it, he wouldn't just fail, he would destroy himself with his own plan. I went back downstairs, my face calm, my book still in my hand. Nathan glanced at me, his eyes sharp, searching for signs that I suspected anything. I gave him nothing. Let him believe he was winning. Let him believe I was blind. Because very soon, the hunter would become the hunted. The storm raged all night, but Nathan didn't make his move. He stayed curled on the couch, pretending to be afraid of the thunder, his eyes flicking toward me every few minutes. Maybe he was waiting for me to fall asleep. Maybe he wanted the perfect moment. But I didn't sleep. I lay awake in my room, watching the camera feeds on my hidden monitor. At 2 a.m., I saw him creep outside again, checking the gasoline trail he had poured along the porch. The rain had washed most of it away, and frustration flashed across his face. He kicked the empty can, then slumped back inside, his plan ruined. It was almost funny. Almost. But the truth was, his determination scared me more than the fire ever had. If he could try and fail so many times without hesitation, then one day he would succeed. Unless I stopped him first. The next morning, I began putting my final plan into action. I went about my day as usual: work, errands, cooking dinner. Nathan watched me like always, searching for weakness, for a slip. I gave him none. But underneath my calm mask, I was moving the pieces into place. First, I moved the hidden camera footage onto 2 separate drives. One I hid in my safe. The other I stashed inside an old book and slid onto the dusty shelf in the attic where no one ever looked. Even if Nathan found the safe, he wouldn't find the second copy. Second, I told my mother I needed a short trip out of town next weekend. I said I was visiting a friend. She barely looked up from her phone, just nodded, happy that I was finally doing something social. She didn't ask questions. That was exactly what I wanted. Because the truth was, I wasn't going anywhere. The trip was part of the trap. If Nathan thought I would be gone, he would feel safe making his final move. and that's when I would catch him red-handed. The week dragged on, tension buzzing under every ordinary moment. At breakfast, Nathan smiled too sweetly. At dinner, he offered to clear the table, his hands careful, polite. My mother praised him endlessly, blind to the monster she was raising. But I saw through it all. On Friday night, I packed a small bag and left it by the door. I told my mother I'd be leaving early the next morning. Nathan's eyes lit up when he heard that, just for a split second before he masked it with a pout. That night, I pretended to sleep early. But instead of leaving, I slipped quietly into the attic, where I had already set up my small hidden corner. I had a blanket, a bottle of water, my phone, and most importantly, a clear view of the camera feeds. At midnight, the game began. Nathan came out of his room, fully dressed. He tiptoed down the hall, careful not to wake my mother, and went straight for my bedroom. He stood there for a moment, staring at the empty bed, the packed bag still by the door. He thought I was gone. I watched on the monitor as he pulled on a pair of gloves. Then he stepped inside. For the next 20 minutes, I watched him tear my room apart. He ripped open drawers, dumped out boxes, pried at the safe. He wasn't searching for me. He was searching for the money, the documents, anything that would give him control. Finally, he dragged the safe into the hall. I held my breath as he pulled out a small hammer and tried to smash the lock. His face was twisted, desperate, no trace of the child he once was. Just hunger, greed, obsession. When the safe refused to open, his temper snapped. He kicked it down the hall, the crash echoing through the silent house. I waited, expecting my mother to wake up, but her door stayed closed. She slept like the dead. Nathan stormed into the kitchen, rummaging through drawers until he found the biggest knife we owned. He held it in his hands, testing the weight, and for a moment I felt ice in my veins. That knife wasn't just for the safe. It was for me. I realized then that if I walked into that hall right now, he wouldn't hesitate. He would stab me and blame it on fear, on an accident, on anything. And my mother would believe him. But that wasn't going to happen. Because this time, I had the upper hand. I dialed the number I had already prepared and whispered into the phone. Then I sat back, silent in the attic, and waited. Nathan returned to my room with the knife, slashing the mattress, pulling at the bed frame, searching like a madman. His hair stuck to his forehead with sweat, his breathing harsh and uneven. He looked less like a boy and more like a cornered animal. Then, headlights flashed outside. Red and blue lights. Nathan froze. The knife dropped from his hands as the sound of car doors slammed shut. Heavy boots pounded on the porch. The police. My heart raced, but not from fear, from relief. My plan was finally in motion. I had sent them an anonymous tip earlier in the week, with copies of the footage attached. I told them a 12-year-old boy was plotting something dangerous, that there was proof. They hadn't believed it at first, but when I promised more evidence, they agreed to come check quietly, without warning. Now here they were. Nathan ran to the window, panic flashing across his face. He tried to hide the knife, kicking it under the bed, but it was too late. The front door burst open, officers flooding the house with flashlights and shouts. I stayed hidden in the attic, silent, watching it unfold on the cameras. My mother stumbled out of her room, confused and terrified, demanding to know what was happening. The police ignored her. They had their eyes on Nathan. He stammered, tried to explain, but the evidence was everywhere. The knife, the torn-up room, the smashed safe. And when they found the shoebox in his closet with the matches and duct tape, there was no denying it anymore. For the first time, Nathan looked small, truly small. His face crumpled as they handcuffed him, dragging him out into the night. My mother screamed his name, tried to pull him away, but the officers held her back. I sat in the attic, my hands trembling, tears burning my eyes. Not because I was sad, but because it was finally over. Or at least, I thought it was. Because as they led Nathan out, he turned his head, and for just a second, his eyes met mine through the camera lens. And he smiled. A chilling, knowing smile. As if he was telling me the game wasn't over. Not yet. The night Nathan was taken away, the house was chaos. My mother screamed at the police, demanding they release him, insisting it was all a misunderstanding. But the officers remained firm, explaining they had evidence, videos, recordings, and now physical proof from his room. She turned on me the moment the flashing lights faded down the street. "This is your fault," she hissed, her voice shaking with fury. "You've always been jealous of your brother. How dare you set him up like this? For a moment, her words pierced me like knives. Even after everything, she couldn't see him for what he was. She couldn't see me for who I had become. But instead of arguing, I just looked at her, calm and steady. Mom, I said softly, you'll understand soon enough. The truth has been living in this house for years, you just chose not to see it. Then I walked away, leaving her alone in the hallway, clutching the door frame as if the house itself was collapsing around her. The days that followed were a blur. The police questioned me, of course. They wanted to know how long I had been suspicious, how much I had recorded, why I hadn't come forward sooner. I told them everything. How the matches, the gasoline, the knife, the accidents weren't accidents at all. How I had slept in fear, waiting for the next attempt. The investigators were stunned by the detail, by the evidence. They told me my quick thinking may have saved my life. Nathan, on the other hand, told a different story. He insisted I had framed him. He claimed I was paranoid, that I hated him, that I was planting things in his room to make him look bad. At 12 years old, his voice still carried the weight of innocence, and I could see how tempting it would be for people to believe him. But the cameras didn't lie. The footage showed him sneaking out at night, pouring gasoline, hiding knives, watching me with eyes too cold for a child. The prosecutor called it chilling. My mother visited him at the juvenile detention center every day. She came home after each visit with red eyes, blaming me again and again. You ruined his life, she sobbed. He's just a child. Children make mistakes. I wanted to scream. Mistakes are breaking a vase, stealing candy, skipping homework. Trying to burn your sister alive? That's not a mistake. That's intent. But I didn't scream. Because deep down, I realized something horrifying. Maybe Nathan wasn't born like this. Maybe he became like this because of her. The favoritism, the excuses, the way she always shielded him, protected him, let him believe he was untouchable. She didn't just fail to stop him. She built him. And I knew then that I couldn't save her either. Weeks later, the court date arrived. Juvenile cases are usually closed, but because of the severity, this one drew attention. Reporters whispered about the child predator with a plan. Neighbors gasped when they learned the smiling boy who played basketball in the driveway had been plotting something unthinkable. I sat in the front row, my hands clenched in my lap, watching Nathan shuffle and wearing the plain clothes of detention. His hair was shorter, his cheeks thinner, but his eyes, those eyes were the same. He glanced around the courtroom until his gaze landed on me. And he smiled again. That same haunting, chilling smile from the night he was arrested. As if to say, you may have won this round, but I'm still here. The judge spoke of rehabilitation, therapy, structure. They talked about the possibility of him being released when he turned 18, depending on his progress. My mother wept tears of relief at that. But I felt only dread. Because I knew Nathan. I knew the darkness inside him wouldn't disappear with time or therapy. It would fester. It would wait. And one day, he would be free. That night, I walked through the house, silent and still. My mother was in her room, crying herself to sleep. The walls felt heavy with secrets, with memories that no longer belonged to me. I went to my attic, where my second copy of the evidence was still hidden inside the book. I pulled it out, held it in my hands, and made a decision. I wasn't going to live in fear anymore. If Nathan came back one day, if he tried again, I would be ready. But until then, I had a life to live. A life that was mine, no longer chained to his shadow. I packed my bags the next morning, leaving the house quietly, without saying goodbye. My mother didn't stop me. Maybe she didn't care. Maybe she was too blinded by her grief. As I walked away, I felt the weight of years lifting off me. Nathan had tried to kill me. My mother had betrayed me. But they hadn't broken me. And that was their biggest mistake. Years from now, maybe Nathan will walk free. Maybe he'll come looking for me again. But what he doesn't know is that I'm not the same girl he tried to destroy. I'm stronger, smarter, ready. And if he ever comes back for me, this time, the trap won't just catch him. It will end him. And that's the story of how my 12-year-old brother tried to kill me for money, but walked straight into my plan instead. Sometimes the real monsters aren't strangers. They're the people sitting across from you at the dinner table, the ones smiling in family photos, the ones everyone else swears are just kids making mistakes. But I learned the truth. Monsters don't stop until you stop them. And I did. For now.